People who recognize the name Linda Greenlaw as that woman who survived the perfect storm generally regard me as fearless, courageous, a leader of men. My first thought from up here on the stage is, holy shit, give me a little storm any day. I should probably apologize in advance for inadvertent slip into what I refer to as salty language. And I'd love to blame any slip on my long-standing relationship with the rough and tumble world of commercial fishing. But the truth is, I learned most of those bad words at home. I was brought up in a household where I was absolutely forbidden to use the word hate. I wasn't allowed to say shut up. Shit, damn, and hell were okay even from toddlers. I wasn't allowed to chew gum as a kid because my mother said it was unladylike, but I could swear like a pirate. My mother would never bat an eye. So I don't come from a world of stages and clip-on mics and TED Talks. I come from the pull on your boots, roll up your sleeves, put your head down and grind workaday world of commercial fishing. I was raised on and off the coast of Maine where boats and fishing are the way of life. I spent my early childhood trying to catch anything that swam or crawled around the shores surrounding my home. I had an idyllic childhood. Friends would say I've had a very long childhood. That's okay, I can deal with that. When I was at an age where kids learned to ride bikes, I learned how to row. When 10-speed bikes were all the rage, I had my very first 10-horse outboard motor. At the age of 19, I somehow got into Colby College, and it was in desperate need of money for school. I felt it was a very natural step for me to go commercial fishing. Back in 1979, there was a lot of money in commercial fishing. At the age of 19, I packed my sea bag, threw it aboard a boat, and went out for my first 30-day adventure to the Grand Banks of Newfoundland. And it was at the age of 19 that I absolutely fell in love with my life. I fished my way through school. Back then I said I was fishing for tuition. Graduated 4 years later with a degree in English and government. Much to my parents' dismay, I started my career as a year-round commercial fisherman. Got a lot of advice from my parents at that time. I'd say the worst advice I've received in my life was from my mother at that time when she said I was wasting my education. I heard it time and time again. Commercial fishing is no place for an educated young person. You're wasting your education. I do a lot of talks to schools, and one of the things I always stress, education can never be wasted. Your education becomes you. You hear education as a tool. I disagree. A tool is something when it's not in use, it lays in the drawer. If you're not pounding nails with a hammer, it's wasted. I used every bit of my education every day, whether I'm fishing, writing, speaking. Can never be wasted. All right, back to fishing. Ran many different boats. I say I worked my way up to the captain's chair in a very traditional manner. I stayed on the same boat long enough to become first mate. And when the owner of that boat bought a second boat, needed a captain, that was my opportunity to be a skipper. I skippered many different boats, many different fisheries. Most of my experience is fishing swordfish all over the North Atlantic Ocean, anywhere from Brazil to Labrador. Back in 1991, I encountered a storm that was then known as the Halloween Gale of 1991. Later became known as the Perfect Storm by Sebastian Junger, and although my introduction did include this, my life changed dramatically as a result of the Perfect Storm. I'm not talking about the weather event, I'm talking about the book. In his book, Sebastian Junger said of me, and it's just one very short passage, the Hannah Bowden is skippered by a Colby College grad named Linda Greenlaw. Not only is Greenlaw one of the only women in the business, she's one of the best captains, period, on the entire East Coast. Year after year, trip after trip, she makes more money than anyone. When the Hannah Bowden unloads her catch in Gloucester, swordfish prices plummet halfway around the world. I love that part. You can imagine it's been a pretty tough image for me to live up to. Many changes. Probably one of the more humorous changes that very generous portrayal brought my way was in people's initial reaction to me, if people know me as a woman who survived the perfect storm. After hello, the next thing I usually hear is, we thought you'd be a lot bigger. Sometimes a degree of disappointment. So those of you who are disenchanted, sorry, I'm not bigger. Anyway, more significant changes that very generous portrayal brought my way was I got in from hauling lobster traps one night, and I had a message on my answering machine. And I'll remember it like it was yesterday. Hi, Linda. This is Emily Bestler calling from Simon & Schuster. We've read The Perfect Storm, and we're really intrigued with this female fisherman thing you have going on. Do you want to write a book? And at the time, I thought, no, that sounds like a lot of work. And I never returned the woman's call. Understand that Perfect Storm was on the top of every bestseller list in the nation. And I got 3 very similar calls within a week's time. Major publishers in New York. We've read The Perfect Storm. Will you write a book? I had to understand what an opportunity I was being handed. I have friends who would kill for the opportunity to have a book published. I have friends who write beautifully, yet they get rejection letter after rejection letter, understanding that those letters are coming from people who probably haven't looked at their material at all. So how lucky was I to be offered an opportunity to write a book that was going to be published? I jumped on the opportunity, obviously. I'd say it took me a year to write my first book, The Hungry Ocean, the most difficult year of my life. I'm used to hard work. I've been fishing since I was a kid. Nothing compared to me to the work of taking something from here or here and getting it down in some articulate form that people would actually enjoy reading. As I said, a very difficult year. No one was more surprised than I was when my first book became a bestseller. That success brought opportunity number 2. I wrote another book, The Lobster Chronicles, about my life on a very small island in the lobster fishing industry. My older sister referred to that book as a 260-page personal ad. Honestly, I said in the book, and this is what I said that brought that on, I said that I had given up sword fishing to take up lobstering so that I could be home. I was in my late 30s. I'd never been married. I wanted to have children. I wanted to have what I had growing up. I moved home to this little island. I moved to an island where there were 3 single men. 2 are gay, 1's my cousin. No exaggeration. So the family planning was not that well planned. Anyway, success of The Lobster Chronicles brought opportunity number 3. I wrote a book called All Fishermen Are Liars. That title served me well until I was standing trial in Canada for international fishing crimes. The title was used against me. Never regretted it until that point. Yada, yada. On and on it goes. I have written 9 books. I still can't believe it. When I'm introduced as an author, I have to pinch myself because I think of myself as a fisherman. So it's just weird to be recognized for being a writer. I'd like to mention the title of my first book. I know that this theme tonight is inspiration. I occasionally get a paid speaking event through a lecture agent. When I first started doing that, I was listed in their catalog as a motivational speaker. And honestly, I don't believe in motivational speaking. I think motivation comes from within. You can't motivate someone. And I did my very first motivational talk, and I left my notes on the table, and I was too embarrassed to go back and get them. And I started my talk by saying, motivational speaking is bullshit. And I think I spent 40 minutes, not 18, I spent 40 minutes doing a good job supporting my opening statement. Lecture agent wasn't really impressed. Said, no, you can't do that. They aren't going to pay you to tell them they're wasting their money. The next catalog that came out, I found myself in the inspirational speakers. I said, wow, that's pretty cool. I don't know what I did to screw that up speaking to Pratt & Whitney, but I am now considered an adventure speaker. But I do know that tonight is inspiration. An inspiration I can do because I know what inspires me. I've been inspired by the other speakers this evening. I am honored to be included among them. I am inspired by anyone who loves what they do, is good at what they do, works hard at what they do. So I should be inspiring to you. I love what I do. The Hungry Ocean, the title of my first book. Some of you may be aware that title's from a Shakespearean sonnet. To me, that title refers to the ocean's ability to totally consume. I know it sounds cliche to say that you're drawn to or taken with something. I like the way I feel when I'm at sea. I am passionate about catching fish. And as proud as I am to be recognized as an author, nothing makes me prouder than to say that I'm a fisherman. Thank you.